All right, and we are live for another edition of Couch Caucus. I am here with Sarah Eady, who is my guest co-host because Bree is on the road this week, and we are going to go over some tips and tricks to following bills in the legislature, and kind of talk about some of the ones that we've been following. So, Sarah, do you want to give folks a quick introduction about yourself?
Sure. Yeah. So my name is Sarah Eady. I live here in Pierre, born and raised in South Dakota, and also have cats on the floor fighting. So there may be some growling that you hear. Born and raised in South Dakota. I grew up on a family farm, so my family's been here for a long time. So otherwise, that's about it. I am involved with Pierre Area Center for Equality here in Pierre. Yeah, that's about it.
And what have you been doing to keep up with the legislature this year?
It is like a part-time job. So kind of a background of how I started, why I started doing this. So last year, I don't know why, but for some reason I went to the legislator website and was looking at bills. And this was at the very end of session when pretty much it was beyond the point of contacting people, everything was done. And I was just reading through everything that had been introduced, whether it got killed or passed. And there were so many things that I'm like, I didn't know that this was a bill that they tried passing. Because you hear about someone in the news or different organizations that I follow, but there's a few that just kind of slip under the radar. And so then this year I'm like, okay, I'm going to actually follow. It's like a part-time job.
Yeah. Yeah,
Huh.
and so I posted a link in the comments for the sort of where you can find all of the bills for 2021. And so this is it's all of the House bills and all of the Senate bills. And there are some ways that you can search them. Like if you click in the filter area, you can start typing in the bill number, if you know the bill number, or you can just type in a word. And yeah, there's so much, and every bill in South Dakota gets a hearing in committee, and so that's part of why we have so many bills. We're at least now past the point where legislators can drop an unlimited amount of bills. So the flow of new stuff will kind of stop, but we are always keeping an eye out for things like hog housing, or when they amend a bill, which is essentially amending a bill beyond recognition.
Yep.
And I know today, Sarah, we were chatting about some of the different fates of the bill. So can you talk about some of the ones that you ran across as far as what happened to them sort of in the process, the ones that got tabled, ones that got hog housed?
Yeah. And so I feel like pre this year, I had a basic understanding of what deferred to 41st means, what past committee, the general terms. And I've heard of hog house before, but whew, man, I really learned a lot this year. But yeah, I mean, so everything gets assigned to committee. That committee can pass it, they can amend it, they can not pass it. I've seen one, they can even basically let it go out of committee of we have no recommendation. Mm-hmm. You mentioned tabled. So that was something that I knew what tabling means. I've heard it in meetings and stuff, so I know what that means. But today I got that clarification of that, deferred to 21st pretty much means it's done. Whereas tabled, could be brought back up later.
Yeah. Yeah. And we've been talking about the different times to sort of get strategic with your outreach, because yeah, there's a ton of bills that happen. And one of the things that it's great to contact your legislators, but you want to be smart about what time, when you're contacting them in the process, because a bill, is on either the House side or the Senate side. It gets assigned to a committee, and then the committee, it has to pass out of committee to the floor. It has to then pass the floor, and then it has to cross over to the other chamber. And we are going to be coming up on crossover day here fairly shortly where the bills have to be passed out of their house of origin in order to keep moving forward. But I know we have like a lot of terrible bills, and when they're not assigned to a committee yet, we don't really know sort of who we're going to want to be contacting, because our legislators, there are some that are more sort of communicative than others, but it doesn't really endear you to them if you're spamming them about every single bill that drops, and it's a bill that they may never see because it's not gonna get passed. Like on the Senate side for District 24, like it's not going to be helpful to like email Mary Duval about something that has not even been assigned to a House committee yet.
Right. Yeah, and the other thing I think also is, in the past I've listened to hearings, I've sat in on them, but not as to the extent I have this year. The other thing that I also kind of just had a light bulb moment of, this is like a part-time job for me, and I'm not even following all the bills. I'm just following the ones that like pique my interest, either for good or bad. Mm-hmm. And it's literally a part-time job. It's what I do on my 2 15-minute breaks. It's usually what I do on my lunch hour. I'm doing it in the evening. Like, it's a part-time job that I'm not getting paid for. But I had that realization of like, holy buckets, these legislators that obviously are following more than I am, how much that it limits them on their own ability to research and to see, because a bill might say a certain thing, but its impact might be reach way more than what it says in the bill. I think it just had that realization of how much testimony matters, contacting legislators, because they might not have that chance to think this bill's connected to this because the sponsor doesn't say it. So I think that just also had a realization of how important it is to testify or to contact your legislators.
Yeah, and I was looking to, there was the bill to essentially sort of nuke the Secretary of State's ability to send out like those unsolicited
absentee
ballot request things. And, that's one that, it's important for people who appreciated that service, or, that made it, voting, more accessible for them in a time of COVID. Like, those are the stories that legislators need to hear. There's a lot of bills that we are like fighting, but, and it's important to, fight those in a way, have those personal stories and be like, this is how this will impact me as a South Dakotan, as your constituent, that kind of thing. Yep. And keeping your communication, like concise and to the point, and like resisting the urge to send just like the form letters, because they'll maybe like lump those all together and be like, yep, I got 150 of those, but they're not reading them.
Yep.
So yeah, having a personal message on how a bill is going to impact you is a really, really great thing to do. And then especially being like strategic about when you're contacting them. So yeah, we've got so many bills, just like so much crap. I will say, like, one of the good things this week is that House concurrent resolution about Black History Month went down in flames. like they did not adopt the amendment that would have made it better.
Right.
But the second best thing was they killed it. It was like 4 votes for it and like 60 against it. It was very lopsided. It was great.
And that amendment, if I'm correct, I believe it was it Duba that was the one that, and great amendment. It was let's essentially erase the whole thing. Yep. And let's focus on Black South Dakotans and what they've done in their communities. And I'm like, okay, that works. And yeah, fine, that didn't get passed, I guess, but at least the original didn't get passed either, because hotness.
Yep. Yeah, and so that's the thing too, for resolutions, like resolutions don't do anything legally. They're just sort of the legislators like bloviating about something. I personally kind of hate resolutions and wish they didn't exist.
I do too. There's a resolution, and I don't mean to trash talk it, but it kind of goes off what you say that it's meaningless. There's one that just kind of like acknowledges everyone who's had to make changes to COVID, who's, just for the fact of us going through it. I'm like, that's great. But how's that going to help people? How's that going to help the person who has loss of income? It doesn't.
Yeah, they take up time on the floor with the flood of actual bills that people need to be considering. It's just like, why are we doing this? We're just doing this to hear ourselves talk. Cool. Yes. Let's move on to actual legislating, which I mean can sometimes be terrifying because they're really in a lot of cases not making good decisions.
No, there's so many, and again, I'm really bad about not paying attention to local media, but it just doesn't seem like there's as much focus on how many bills there are about voting and about counting ballots and absentee voting. I mean, there is a lot of bills that focus on that this year.
Yeah, and so I'll give a plug to South Dakota League of Women Voters if you are. And that's the thing that we kind of talked about, that Bree and I talked about last week with Rebecca Turk with DRA. Like if there are certain areas that you're interested in, like if you're interested in the environment, like join DRA, like their legislative update will be very useful for you. If you're interested in the voting issues and the redistricting stuff, like join League of Women Voters, because that's the area that they're focusing on, and those are the action alerts that you'll get from them. As far as the civil rights, the LGBTQIA stuff, ACLU has great action alerts that cover, and I will say like ACLU probably covers the broadest range of topics, I think, because a lot of stuff falls under that civil rights umbrella. So that's another good one as far as aggregating bills and sort of what to do about them. And also they're like, hey guys, here are the ones we're going to sue you for. Like,
Yep.
Like, all right, Governor Noem, you going to sign these? Like, cool, we're ready.
Yep.
And then for the marijuana stuff, what is the organization? Is it South Dakotans for Better Marijuana Laws? They have I feel like they have a very long day, but the Amendment A people, those are the ones to follow for the stuff related to the marijuana legislation, which, dear God, like,
that's a lot. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of bills on initiated measures and how those get introduced and passed and everything.
So. Yeah. So the one that's at the top of the League of Women Voters alert is Senate Bill 86, and that's the one to revise certain requirements regarding the review of initiated amendments to the Constitution and to declare an emergency. Oh, another fun note, when a bill says to declare an emergency, it's not like, oh no, like the Capitol's on fire. It's when this is signed into law, it goes into effect. Otherwise, when bills are signed into law during session, they go into effect. Generally, it's like the start of the next fiscal year. It's July 1st.
Yep.
It's the state year. There's all sorts of different years that people go off of. But you say declare an emergency, those go into effect immediately.
Right.
So those can sometimes be ones that you're looking at like, why? What is so important about this that it needs to happen right now?
Yep.
And let's see, other fun things. On the LRC webpage, like don't get too specific when you're typing stuff into the filter, because it, stick with broad words. And then once you get into bills, there will be like category. LRC has like categories, so you can find all the ones that are in like the abortion category, and that can be another way if you've got a certain interest or certain set of bills that you're interested in, that you can find them that way.
Yeah, I didn't know that they had the category Hog House, which is great, because then I can actually look up specifically, okay, which ones do I need to watch for some random day that amendment, and yeah.
Yeah, it's just, and it's so interesting too. Like I was thinking about the marijuana stuff today, and like the the IM-26, the medical marijuana, and how Governor Nome is like, oh, we can't get it done this year. Like, we need another year. And I'm like, that passed in early, it passed on election day, like 70+% of the vote. And the legislators, like, know that they're going to be legislators. Like, they could have done some homework and like started writing bills about this before session started, which clearly they have done for other issues because they're like always ready to go with the anti-trans bullshit as soon as as soon as they get sworn in. So it's like, I really don't buy the excuse that like, oh, we don't have time to do this. Like, no, you have time. You're just choosing not to spend it on this thing that the voters said, hey, we want you to do it.
Yep.
So that was a realization that raised my blood pressure today. Like, just one of many.
Yeah. Yep.
And I know, Cleo, it's awful that the same people that happily accept the votes for them on the ballot don't want to accept the votes that were on those same ballots for marijuana. Very weird how they pick and choose which elections they want to pay attention to. But yeah. And so usually during session, we are both like live tweeting at Cracker Barrels, but sadly we can't do that this year because of COVID, which means that here in District 24, at least, there aren't too many Cracker Barrels happening.
Yeah, my poor Twitter, it's the only thing I use it for. Like, the last tweet was like March of 2020 when we got in on the riot bill hearings, and not a good tweet.
Nope.
But it's my last one. Yep.
Yeah, so for District 24 folks, I know the Pierre Area Chamber of Commerce is hosting some online Cracker Barrels, so make sure to follow their Facebook page to find out when those are going to happen. And I know 12:40 a.m. KCCR has been doing some Saturday morning recorded Cracker Barrels. I caught the first one, and then I haven't been able, like, I don't know if there was one last week. I'm not sure if there's one this week, but that's another one to keep an eye out for if you're in District 24 and wondering what our legislators have been up to. I know on the chamber side that our chapter of League of Women Voters is collecting questions for that one. So if you are watching this and it's still somewhat like early in the week or whatever, and you've got questions, shoot them at our League of Women Voters folks. But yeah, and there's now 6 representatives that have COVID. So I saw that Del Rapids canceled their Cracker Barrel for this weekend because of that. And so I'm hoping that people mask up and like don't hang out with the plague rats from the Capitol.
Yeah. It's really interesting. I didn't really think about until just recently, like, how COVID's impacted like the Cracker Barrels and stuff. Because I just know, I mean, in the past, going to them, they've really, you can tell that they have an impact. I mean, because you can tell when people ask certain questions, you can tell that legislator didn't think of it before, or it forces them to kind of consider something else. And so if they're not getting that feedback from people, in person or actually see it, if it's just through emails. And we have heard legislators blatantly say that they don't read them if it's the form, they ignore it. So yeah, I think it's just interesting how that's different this year.
Yeah, and I know our District 24 representatives, I think both West Graham and Mortensen, said that they were wearing masks, and they've been walking the line of like they'll wear them, but they don't want somebody to tell them to wear them. And it's like, clearly, guys, your peers need to be told to wear them because they're not making that same decision. And I don't think they're going to make it to day 40 of session in person if they continue at this rate.
No, I don't think so either. Because what day are we on? I
think today was day 20, because I think yesterday was 19. So yeah, like we're we're hitting the halfway mark, and honestly, they made it a lot farther than I thought they were. I think possibly due to the fact that the Senate had rules, has rules, and was wearing masks, so that kind of took some people out of the, out of being like spreaders and that kind of thing. But it's like, guys, you've got all these bills to deal with, like.
Yep.
I mean, and the funny thing with the South Dakota Constitution is, it sets the length for the legislative session, but it doesn't say when it has to be. So in theory, if they all go down with COVID, like, they could like bump the rest of session, at some point, like later in the winter, spring, or whatever. But I don't see that happening. But this all reminded me of the one bill that you were following about the statues that got nuked.
Yeah.
Just because it was funny.
So one thing I've been busy like the past week, and so I haven't been very current in my following. I mean, it's pretty much, I'm always a day behind. So like, I don't even quite know about what was in hearing today or what was on the floor today. I'll probably check that tomorrow. But so I was checking on bills from like the past week that have had any kind of action on them. And so I was following the statue one because I just thought it was ridiculous to have 10-foot statues, 10 foot, 10 foot. Oh yeah. Anyways, and I click on it and it said amendment. I'm like, okay, maybe they decided to go with 9 feet tall. Maybe they wanted to bump it up to 12. And it was completely stripped. And so, yeah, I'm just glad that we don't have 10-foot statues in the Capitol.
Yeah, those were, I think, supposed to go on the outside in those like niches. But yeah, honestly, if she wants a new plane this year, save the money on the statues and put it towards the plane.
Put the statues in the plane.
Yeah.
Might affect fuel. I'm not sure.
Right. But, yeah. Like.
Yeah, but, and I believe it. I mean, it got completely stripped to be. I mean, so far it just shows like it's going to be a memorial for Representative, or was he on House or was he Senate?
He was on House.
Okay, so Representative Glanzer, who passed away, so completely stripped it to, which again, it's interesting to me how bills can be completely gutted and just something else.
Yeah, and that adds like another like layer to keeping track of things, because at any point in the process, like things can really change.
Yeah.
And like how we saw with I don't think it was 1076 this year, but the one that got smoked out, was it 1076? Sometimes I have like the bill numbers in my head from previous years. But the birth certificate bill that got
1076, yeah.
Okay. All right. But that one that got smoked out on the House floor. So like everyone was super excited that it died in committee, and it was a close vote in committee, but it was voted down in committee. So we're like, okay, cool, yay, like we stopped it at this point. And then it got smoked out on the House floor, and it's like, seriously, guys, like, like,
yeah. I remember that, like all the Facebook posts were like, he got killed, and then like just a little bit later, never mind.
Yeah, and so committees meet in the morning. There are committees that are at like 7:45. There are committees that are at 10, and then the House and the Senate, those sessions are generally start around 2:00 in the afternoon. So that's sort of like the legislative day timing of when things are happening. And what's crazy too is like I think about, like, I remember two years ago, I think it was, they spend all this time on these bills on the floor, and like things, the legislative days get longer and longer because like if they don't deal with everything on their agenda for the day, it just keeps getting bumped, and they're gonna have to deal with it. And so then they end up getting to like the budget stuff, and they're at the Capitol until 3 a.m. And it's like,
yep,
this is another reason why I don't like resolutions, because they take
That's
up, and then you end up with like the budget, which is like the appropriations bill, which is, one of the biggest, most complicated, most important things about like, funding the state of South Dakota. And you've got people who are, have been up for almost 24 hours who are like voting on it. And like, that's
no,
not how good decisions get made.
no. I've never made good decisions after being up that long. Never.
But yeah, no, like nothing good happens after 2 a.m. Like, no.
No. Yeah. Yeah. That was, I did briefly look at, I think it was Senate. Senate, and I'm not sure if the website hasn't been updated, but it looked like almost every single bill that was on Senate floor today was just another day, another day. And so I want to listen to like the actual recording, which I think is also a really handy feature, is that whenever you go to a bill and it will list all the different actions, it will have an audio button, and you click on it and it takes you to the exact point that they start talking about it, which is really useful for me, because if I have to listen to the entire thing to figure out when they talk about my bill, ain't happening. So I'm curious to like actually listen to what did happen on the Senate floor today then.
Yeah. And it's and if you go to sd.net, that's where you can listen to the things live. So if you do like, so they have the audio and the video for the committee hearings, and for the floor sessions. So if you are wanting to listen to anything live, that's where to go. Like, shout out to SDPV. But yeah, like the LRC website is like, once you sort of learn your way around it, like it does a very good job of putting everything in one spot for you, as far as being able to listen to the audio from the different parts of the process, and then also to see the bill text either in HTML or PDF form, see all the amendments. And that's the thing about the, politics and participating in this process, is that, I mean, like for me, this is my like team sport. Like I don't follow professional sports. I follow the South Dakota legislature. Like I can tell you nothing about the Super Bowl except for like what Roger Goodell is ruining the league or something. I don't know. Like I forget what was on her bingo card there.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I'm the same way. The main takeaway I got from the Super Bowl was that someone ran on the field.
Yeah. So it's like I can't tell you about that. I cannot name the quarterback for anything, but I can tell you, what Fred Deutsch has been up to. I can tell you which Jensen I hate the most. Like like that's where those are the things that I follow. And then I saw a tweet that was making the rounds today. I think there was some sort of, hot take op-ed piece about how somebody like missed all of the shit about the Trump presidency, as far as like the stuff that was happening. It was exciting. It was terrifying. Like and I'm like, clearly you've never been paying attention to your local politics. Like,
right.
Like this is the Trump presidency. Like honestly, like for the 40 days of South Dakota legislative session, I would put whatever national dumpster fire was happening. I'm like, we have a local dumpster fire. Like
I feel like every day is a Four Seasons full landscaping.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like people get so invested in national politics, which, I mean, great. Obviously, like, yes, we need to pay attention. Like, we need to impeach Trump again because, hey, there was an insurrection on January 6th. I'm still mad about that. But the stuff that's happening locally, like, and I say it a lot, is like those are where the decisions are being made that really impact day-to-day lives, like in this state. And that's where we need people to get excited and follow and be engaged and be involved. And so it's like, yeah, like it is totally a part-time job to like follow all of those bills. And it's, I love like skimming through your Facebook posts and being like, oh, hey, that's what happened with that. But, and even, you can be involved and you don't have to follow all the bills. If you just like, there's certain areas that you're, are really invested in, like follow those and, speak up, post about them, share them on your social media, make your network aware of them, because, politics, like all politics is local and politics is in everything. Like it's not useful to say, oh, I don't talk about politics, because if you're like complaining about traffic, essentially like roundabout, you're talking about politics, because like infrastructure, like laws, it's everything.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, and so like before this year, that's exactly what I did too. Is I mean, followed ACLU and stuff, and by all means, like all of them do a fantastic job. And I think this year, there's a lot that just piqued my interest that kind of fall in between the cracks, or there'd be ones that would be introduced, and it's just I'd follow it because it's like, why was this introduced? It sounds like you have a personal problem and you're just trying to make it into a law, which is the highest level of petty.
Oh, that would be Pishki.
Like certain very like super specific laws. Yep. It's like, okay, like, and I think those are things that too are just really interesting, that you learn a lot about reading between the lines. And a bill might talk about something, but when you actually think about it, its implications could be something completely outside of what even the bill mentions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's, and one of the things too that you pick up following it from year to year is, what legislators have certain like hobby horses that they just will not let go of, like Deutsch and transgender children. That's baffling to me.
Yep.
Super annoying. And and that's one of the things, like, as long as Fred Deutsch is in the legislature in any capacity, these bills will keep coming up.
Yep.
And so it's, and who knows with redistricting, like, how that's going to sort of change the landscape when we're looking at the 2022 election. But all of the people in the legislature right now, their terms are 2 years. Like every 2 years, you get to vote them out if you want to, like, and have somebody to run against them. And so that's why that's why Bree and I are doing this, and talking about this stuff every week during session, and then like probably every other week or so in the off season, because we need folks to be engaged at that local level, to be finding candidates, supporting them, running them, so that we've got somebody to run against the Fred Deutsches and the Pischkes and the Jensens and the whatever shown fill in the blank on the end of the last name.
Yep.
Because like if we don't have Fred Deutsch in the legislature, like sweet, we can get rid of some of these, stop these anti-trans bills before they even get written. Not to say that there's not some other one in there that would pick up that mantle and run with it, but
right.
Like,
I mean, you notice that it's the same legislators every session and every year that have the same thing. And yeah.
And for him, like, even the fact that Dugard like vetoed one of the earlier iterations of the bathroom bill, the fact that it got that far and the governor vetoed it, and he's still bringing it up.
Yep.
And granted with a different governor who would probably fucking sign it.
Right. Right.
But yeah, it's just we need more people to follow the local stuff and get as stoked about the local drama as they do about the national nightmares that were happening and that continue to happen.
Yep.
But yeah, I did want to plug some fun stuff that we're going to be doing on Tuesday. We usually have a legislative dinner, but because it's COVID and I don't want to kill all of the local Democrats, we're going to be doing that virtually this year. It's going to be on Zoom, and we'll have some musical performances and some comments from our Democratic legislative leaders. And it should be a fun time. We're also encouraging folks to wear their favorite campaign swag, decorate. I'm going to throw the link for where you can RSVP in the chat. And that's going to be February 16th at 7 p.m. We would love to see folks from all over the state. Usually, when it's during session, we have the legislators, stop by, and whoever's sort of in town lobbying that day or whatever swings in. But yeah, we'll be online this year, so hopefully we'll see a lot of folks there. Sarah, I want to thank you so much for hopping on Couch Caucus with me tonight and talking about bills. Is there anything, any closing thoughts or anything else you wanted to throw out there before we head out?
No, I think just really reiterating again, if there's something that is of that either affects you or affects someone that you know or is a passion of yours, contact your legislators. Because like I said, listening in on the hearings and stuff, you can definitely tell that a lot of the folks are depending on the information that they get from the sponsor, from the people testifying. And those voices have a lot of weight. I mean, when I listen to the hearings, especially like the committee hearings, they're asking questions that you can tell that they're relying on that information presented because they don't have the time to, on their own time, research. So yeah, definitely make sure you're contacting them or testifying because it holds weight.
Yeah, and with testifying this year, you can still testify in person, but they are also doing remote testimony. And the trick with that is you have to contact that committee. I think it's 24 hours before the committee would start. So if it's like a 7:45 a.m. Monday committee, you've got to be in touch with them by Sunday morning. So definitely check that out if you're interested in doing the remote testimony so that you get in there in the time allotted. But yeah, if you're in Pierre, they are still doing in-person testimony. I would recommend wearing a mask and not touching anything. But yeah, we will hopefully see a lot of you on Tuesday night at our legislative dinner. Otherwise, Bree and I will be back for another Couch Caucus next Thursday, and who knows what fresh hell we'll have to cover.
Yeah, unfortunately.
So thanks, everybody. Check out the links in the comments, and thank you again, Sarah, for being on Couch Caucus with me.
Absolutely. Bye.